Hey folks, Steve here with another video. I am going to be continuing my playthrough series for Fatal Alliances and still play a complete turn through for folks who are tracking that series, but I thought I'd take a little bit of a break from that to do we'll call it a most anticipated games of 2018 video as sort of a break from the normal rhythm and to cover some things related to just the hobby in general. First, want to just throw out a quick thank you and shout out to Big Board Gaming, which I have up here on my screen. Kev over there at the Big Board was nice enough to provide a little shout out to me and my channel on his vlog site, and you can check that here. Look for the picture of the cat, and I just want to thank Kev for throwing the shout out for this channel. There's a good chance you might be watching this video because you saw the share from Kev. So big thanks to him. He's got a lot of stuff going on with his site, a lot of videos on his YouTube channel. So if you haven't heard of the Big Board Gaming, I would suggest you go check that out, though there's probably a good chance you're probably already well aware of it if you're watching my channel. So have fun with that. He's a good guy, does a lot of content, a lot of good content, so please check that out. Maybe in the future I'll do a little video about all the other YouTube channels that I follow for the wargaming hobby. There are a few out there that do produce a lot of great content, and they should get a shout out as well, so we'll look to do that. So then, in terms of my most anticipated games of 2018, I have around 10 sort of products I'm going to talk about real quick, and they're not necessarily in like a countdown sort of order. I sort of structured this video in a way that I can talk through them in a consistent manner, but we'll see how that goes. First thing right out of the gate, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and most anticipation videos are sort of what's to come, and we're a couple of months into 2018, but a lot of games for the year are still yet to come, obviously. I did want to squeak in one game that I just got this week from my P500 pre-order, and that is At Any Cost, Metz 1870. We'll blow up the picture here a little bit for you. So this is a hex encounter, sort of battle, slightly operational level strategy war game that covers what is really considered the most critical opening battles of the Franco-Prussian War, or maybe maybe not the initial battles, but really the critical events that sort of changed the course of that war. And what essentially happened historically was that the French army basically got surrounded and had to surrender at the fortress of Metz, as the Prussian army had kind of, through a variety of reasons, which this game does sort of cover, it had nullified the French army's ability to continue fighting, and would eventually lead to Prussia winning that war and forming the German Empire. And so it doesn't have Paris, it doesn't have a whole map of France. You're really zoomed in at the level of these couple of battles. Here's an example of the map. You can kind of see it's really not a huge amount of area in terms of a map. It's not a strategic level game, but it has a lot of interesting gameplay to it. A lot of folks are familiar with the gameplay style. I just got my copy. I haven't punched it yet. I even have a game that's very similar to this by the same designer from a magazine game, but I'm eagerly looking at wanting to break this open and play it and give it a shot. It might be a little while before I can do that, so I'm including it here just because I had been anticipating it. Now I have it, and I'm looking forward to working my way through it. There are a few scenarios included with a full campaign, so something worth checking out. There are other Franco-Prussian War games out there. The one that first comes to mind is On to Paris, I think, is the name of it, by Compass Games. That one does cover the whole war at a more strategic level, but I haven't really learned enough about that game to determine if I want to get it and play it down the road, but something to consider. So now we'll move on to the actual products that have not come out yet this year. The first one that I must talk about is World in Flames Collector's Edition. Obviously, a lot of my channel so far has been dedicated to the World in Flames system. We're still waiting on the release of the Collector's Edition printing that was set to come out originally late last year, and due to a variety of issues that have been cropping up, it's been sliding, which, in a lot of pre-order / Kickstarter situations, this is bound to happen. The wait is killing me because we've been, at this level of 2 to 3 weeks. And, bless ADG's heart and everything, but when they put out a update in the Kickstarter comments, which isn't necessarily the best place to do that, and occasionally they'll update here, the status has always been 2 to 3 weeks out. Well, a week goes by and it doesn't become 1 to 2 weeks. It's always 2 to 3 weeks. And it's not really their fault. They're working on the actual printing, and now all the files are finalized for printing. So I'm expecting, hopefully, to get my copy maybe by the end of the month. Probably not until April, I bet. It's hurting to be optimistic at this point. But that said, if you don't know what World in Flames is, it's huge. World War II, grand strategic level game. It has a lot of expansions and optional content that you can add to the game that makes it even more deep, even more expansive, with more units and things to worry about. The Collector's Edition Super Deluxe package is something that I had purchased. I have everything but the main game, so I have all the expansions. I have, and by expansions I mean stuff like Days of Decision and Patton and Flames, which are technically standalone games, but they could be used with the World in Flames package. And so I have all of that, and what I'm really missing is the keystone, the main game itself. I'm really looking forward to having it. I'm going to have a million counters to deal with. I'm going to need to get some storage solutions and figure out what I want to do with that. But this is going to be an epic game to have and experience and play. And I've got a spot on my shelf just waiting for it. So this is, it's close. We're almost going to have it. Every week it seems like it's not getting closer, and so I'm dying to get it. We'll look forward to playing it, and then once I do, obviously, this channel is probably going to do some coverage of the World in Flames game, just like I'm doing for Fatal Alliances, which is the World War I version of the World in Flames system. And I'm having a lot of fun with that, obviously, and I really like that game. So this one, just in general, is going to be a big deal once it comes in the mail. I'm going to be very excited. Next, we'll move on to another game that I'm really looking forward to, is Imperium Romanum 3, which is being produced by Decision Games. Right now it's on their pledge program, and the expectation I last saw was we were maybe looking at summer release, potentially the month of June, but things could slide, like in any situation, with something yet to come. Pledge price is $90, which is what I put in for already. I am pre-ordered for this, and Imperium Romanum is a game that originally came out in, I think it was the 80s, and has gone through a couple versions. I actually own a copy of Imperium Romanum 1, the original, though it's missing some components that I purchased pre-owned, and I also got a copy of Imperium Romanum 2 a while back, pre-owned and lightly used, with some counters punched. And they're very cool games. I mean, I almost got them just for the novelty of having, they were sort of available to me, and I jumped on the purchase. But it's a very cool game and system. Each every iteration that has come out so far, which I would definitely say, get version 2 over version 1 if you had to pick, but with 3 on its way, I think 3 is going to be the way to go, obviously. This game is strategic level. If you look at this map here, it's covering France and the British Isles all the way on through to what we would refer to as the Middle East today, or Persia, even Iran, and it's not one big campaign game, but instead the game comes with a scenario book that has several dozen historical scenarios that range from the wars between Marius and Sulla all the way to Attila the Hun, which is several hundred years of different scenarios and situations, and the game system manages to capture these different sort of configurations that the ancient world is in at that point, and it's really remarkable. I will say it's kind of hard to organize in just the way that the counters are set up, and I'm going to be a little mean here. 80s aesthetic map art isn't necessarily the best. In person, looking at this map, it's just kind of, I don't want to say ugly, but it's just not great on the eyes, in my opinion. And so, getting this to the table is kind of a hard thing to do. But what's nice is that the new version coming for the third printing, or the third version, looks much nicer. I can't get super zoomed in here. I can try to get a different resolution from this angle, but you can see a little bit slightly different colors, a little bit lighter. It's going to come in 3 panels, the new map, and here's some other zoomed in shots. So you have your cities very clear on the map. Darker text on a lighter background works a little bit better than sort of the garish colors of previous printings. Take a look at this version here. You can sort of see, the world is still broken up into these different regions that have capitals and cities, and that sort of gets all tied up into information like tax value and where you can raise troops, and all this really interesting stuff that's all covered in the rule book and the playbook, or the scenario book, I guess it's called. And it's just a very, very cool game. Maybe not terribly balanced in a lot of scenarios, is sort of the opinion of most folks, and even the designers have said that in previous versions of this. But in terms of an exercise in history, it's a pretty cool achievement to be able to cover that much territory and history in a single game. I'm very excited for the new version. I haven't really fully played the second version. I've sort of messed around in the Vassal module for it, but I think this third edition is going to be the definitive one. It's going to be an improvement, and it's going to be a pretty cool game experience. So that one's, really looking forward to this one. I've been hoping to try to figure out a way to get a hold of some playtest materials for it and check it out. But overall, really, really looking forward to this one. Decision Games, thank you for picking this one up, since it used to be an old West End Games game originally, which is, of course, out of business, and they got the rights to this somehow, and talking with the designer, so it all is sort of working out great for everybody on this one. Next one I'm really looking forward to is A Pragmatic War, the War of Austrian Succession. This one's being produced by Compass Games and is actually in the No Peace Without Spain system. I've done a text review of the original No Peace Without Spain on Board Game Geek. Really, really enjoy it. It's a CDG, a card-driven game. It's a little bit different than some other CDGs. It's lighter, which is nice, and makes it a fairly quick play. And so enjoy that. Enjoy the 9 Years' War, sort of prequel to No Peace Without Spain, and now we're getting a follow-up game again with the War of Austrian Succession, A Pragmatic War. I have actually been fortunate enough to get some of the playtest materials for this game, the Vassal module, and I have to say I like what I see. there's still a lot of playtest materials that you can see here. The playtest version of the map. It's not the final version, so you take that into consideration. But it, to my mind, it matches the good quality of the original No Peace Without Spain. It has enough things that are different, that it is its own game, but running on the system that you're already familiar with if you've played the other two No Peace Without Spain system games. The War of Austrian Succession doesn't really have very many games about it. It's sort of, much like the War of Spanish Succession. It's sort of an underlooked sort of era or war that doesn't get a lot of attention from other game companies or other games in general. And so, knowing that there's a nice, solid, strategic level CDG for these wars is great. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I think my wife and I will end up playing this one along with our copies of No Peace Without Spain and 9 Years' War. Very cool. Like I said, I've already gotten to play it a little bit by filtering through the playtest materials as the game develops, and so far I think this one's going to be a good one. It's going to be fun. So definitely looking forward to this one. On the list, I think it's set to come out this year. It's on the list because I believe that is the case. Maybe looking at a summer or fall release, but it could slide. We might not get it till next year. So keep an eye on it. There is a pre-order page on Compass Games' website, so you can go to the pre-order section of their site. They will have it now that it's got a nice, pretty board or a game box cover now. Looks very cool and to the era, so you can check that out. Now we're going to get into a few more GMT games. So there's 7 Years' War, Frederick's Gamble. This is a game that is running on the same sort of, we'll say, engine or firmware as Napoleonic Wars, Wellington, and Kutuzov. So it's going to be sort of a medium weight CDG, multiplayer CDG for 4 players. I have been looking for a really great 7 Years' War game. I do have Clash of Monarchs, which is a slightly older multiplayer CDG from GMT. That game is much higher on the complexity scale than I can probably convince a lot of people to play with me. I do have a copy of that. I think it's a cool game. It's a great game. This gives something that is a little more intermediate, and I could probably get more folks to play because I can always get a Napoleonic's war game going at conventions. Folks like Wellington and Kutuzov. And so this one's going to be, I think, right in that vein. It'll be a fun con game. 4 people isn't hard to get together at home either, so I think this is sort of the level that will work out really well for getting to play this. The current version of the map is available on GMT, and you can sort of see it here. It's not fully finalized, but point-to-point movement, fortresses, keys. If you're familiar with Napoleonic Wars game, then this is going to be pretty similar. There's a few things that are different. You have Honors of War. That's a sort of a newer mechanic. You've got these really neat side boxes for the conflicts in India and North America. So here you're kind of playing a little miniature version of Wilderness War in some ways, which is kind of interesting. And you can sort of bounce some units back and forth eventually, I think, and the rules will allow for that. I'm unhappy with the game Frederick for covering the 7 Years' War. I'm not really a fan of that game, so I think this is going to provide a nice, more deep play experience for this. Not as in-depth as Clash of Monarchs, but maybe a little more playable. The map's going to be pretty nice, I think, by the end of all the development, and it can be played 2 players, it can be played 4-player, different configurations for that. Overall, I'm really looking forward to it. This one might not make it this year. It's on GMT's schedule for later in 2018, but with no firm date set, and it's been a little while since I've seen updates for this one. So hopefully we get it this year. If we don't, that's a huge bummer, but I'll be patient and hold out for this one. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Next is going to be the Russian Campaign Designer Signature Edition reprint, which is being done through GMT, but I think is a Consim Press. Uh, yeah, Consim Press um, product, and I'm not sure what the exact relationship is. If Consim Press has the rights and they're leveraging GMT's printing ability to produce the game, I'm not sure the exact relationship. The Russian campaign is, for those who don't know, a game from several decades ago, I think at this point, that was produced way back. And, essentially, someone decided, hey, let's do a reprint and let's kind of clean it up and make it pretty, and just kind of based on some of the sample map encounters that are available, it looks pretty cool. I want to get this sort of as a, I guess a part of it's just the history of the fact that this game's kind of, older and well known, and we're getting a new edition of it. I think that's kind of fun. I want to kind of check that out. But what's really nice about it is that the average playing time is relatively short. A full campaign is 6 or more hours, but that's not too far or too different from a lot of other games that I play. The solitaire is nice, and then it's low to moderate complexity, which means it could be a good hex encounter game to play maybe with my wife to help get her into hex encounter games, but also just to have a nice sort of just an Eastern Front game to play with a friend of mine who really likes World War II, and have a dedicated Eastern Front game would be kind of fun. I have a lot of games that are grand strategic. World in Flames is coming, and other games that you can play just sort of like a Barbarossa scenario, which is basically covering that Eastern Front, and those work fine too. But I think this will be neat just to say, okay, hey, we're playing the Russian campaign, let's do this, and we're gonna play it through, and we're just looking at this map of Russia, and I don't know, I like the idea of that. This printing is going to include, and I think in the rulebook, some of the variants that have been out there that have been popularized, or different versions, because this game's been reprinted over the years via different places and with different revisions. And I think this is set up to give you some options on what rules version do you want to use, as well as do you like using armor counters that have the NATO armor symbol, or do you like the silhouette? I think I like the NATO symbol more personally. That's my style, and the game will accommodate both. So I think that's pretty cool. Looking forward to this one. I think we're getting it this year. It's on track for that. GMT is also doing mounted boards that you would purchase an edition extra separately, and I put the pre-order in for that as well. So I'm getting what is going to be the full deluxe experience. Should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to giving it a shot. Next, then, is one that is hopefully going to be a real classic. So, Imperial Struggle. A lot of folks probably have this on their radar. It's been mentioned and has been posted about in several different places. We haven't gotten a lot of information about this since it was announced. Everything's been kind of on the quieter side. But it is from the same designers as Twilight Struggle, and Twilight Struggle has sort of taken a lot of gamers by storm over the years. Folks that maybe wouldn't start playing war games have now sort of looked and have started playing Twilight Struggle because of honestly, how good it is. Twilight Struggle is an amazing game, great game. My wife really likes it. I really like it. It's always a fun game to play, immersive, and it just has a lot of great mechanics. And so the guys who did that are now looking at doing Imperial Struggle, and that's covering, like the banner says here, the global rivalry between Britain and France from 1697 to 1789. And what's interesting is, it's kind of hard to just capture and understand, what is that, nearly 100 years really encompass, right? 1697, so, it's going to cover the War of Spanish Succession. It's going to cover potentially the 7 Years' War. It's going to cover the American Revolution. It's going to cover, or it's going to end right as the French Revolution is going to start happening, or maybe it's going to start happening in the game. I'm not 100% sure. So it's going to be an interesting question for the game to answer of how do you portray that. And this is going to be a 2-player game. You're going to be playing France or Britain, and fighting that titanic battle. Very similar to Twilight Struggle for influence and strength in the world. So that alone, just knowing that this game is gonna come out, is enough for me to be interested in it. Um, they talk about some of the game mechanics here on the page, but you're still sort of, the proof is in the pudding, right? You'll see it when you see it, and it's hard to kind of understand exactly what they're talking about and how that's really going to be illustrated in the game or portrayed in the game. They're saying that it's low complexity, which I'm going to be interested to see how that really goes. And what has been nice, that you kind of have to dig for it, is there's not a lot of pictures here or other support material, but if you go to the article on Inside GMT, there is actually a nice kind of run through of how this game differs from Twilight Struggle, and you do finally get to see some of the components and what the markers are going to look like. They look beautiful, to be honest. And here's a little bit of the map, and I'm going to be nice and just go ahead and show you the zoomed in version of this. This looks like sort of like a top left portion of the map, and it's showing the eastern North American coast. Down here it looks like that's probably, I can get real zoomed in here. That looks like that's probably Florida, and that this is the sort of southeastern coast. And what the rest of this circle probably shows is the Caribbean. This is showing North America. And I can only imagine what's on the rest of the map, because this is probably maybe a quarter of the map. Just kind of guessing at dimensions here. This is probably a quarter of it, if not smaller. And I imagine there's a whole other map showing Europe. I mean, this is a beautiful map. Look at the detail that they are working in here. I mean, it's just, really, really putting a lot of effort in making this a very beautiful game, a very beautiful package. GMT's probably put a lot of faith in these folks to make a good game, and so they're putting the graphical folks to task on making this look as good as hopefully it will play. You can sort of see there are spaces, but then there are more nebulous things like, it's the Massachusetts Bay, and there's fish here, but there's also, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, and there's what is presumably trapping, like fur trapping. Different resources are associated with locations. So you want to, it seems, control locations for their resources, and there's still connections between them. And there are Native American tribes on here, and there's just, there's a lot going on, and we don't really have a full understanding of what everything means yet on here. But it looks really interesting, that it's going to be multifaceted. Instead of Twilight Struggle, where you really just care how easy is it to coup a country and is it a battleground, I might be saying, well, I really need to get more fur and I need to focus in this area. I want to do something with the Native American tribes. I want to deal with the Sons of Liberty somehow. It is interesting to see, this little snippet and just guess at what the game is really going to be like. But again, I suspect that the components are just going to be beautiful. We're all going to be really impressed by it, I'm sure. Looking forward to this one. The intention, I think, is summer or fall potentially for this one. Hopefully we get it this year and there are no delays with that. It looks like with the map in this shape, it must be nearing completion, and play testing's probably working out well. So really looking forward to that one. And then sort of the last, full game that I want to talk about in terms of anticipation is Gandhi, the decolonization of British India, 1917 and 1947. This is a coin game, and I haven't really talked about coin games very much on this channel, but that will probably change in the future. I really like the coin series. It's a lot of fun. It's a good way to get people playing, historical games that may not be used to war games, and I won't even get to the whole argument of if a coin game is a war game. I think it is a war game, but it's also a political game. There's a lot more to it than that, but anyone who likes a war game will probably have a fun time with a coin game if they have the right exposure to it. And so this is going to be, another in that series, Volume 9. This will be the ninth one. There's several out there. They're all a lot of fun. Of all the ones that I've played, and I have all of them. I just haven't played Pendragon yet. I haven't gotten it to the table. But I will say I can cheat a little bit here because I did have the wonderful opportunity to meet Bruce Mansfield, who is the game designer, at a convention this past convention season. And, I got to play Fire in the Lake with Bruce. I was hosting Fire in the Lake at that convention. Played with him. Had a good time. Nice guy, smart guy. We all had fun playing that. And then later that day, we actually got to play test Gandhi and provide feedback and get the experience of that. And so I can say I anticipate this. I anticipate it so I can get my own copy, because I really did like this one. It's hard to find a coin game that I don't like, though there are certain ones I like less than others, and one that I really don't like as much for a really particular stupid reason. But this one I enjoy. It was a lot of fun. There's a lot of learning opportunity because I know, I'm not huge and knowledgeable of the decolonization of British India, so this is a great learning experience. The map, which the map I played on was pretty much this map, this playtest map that you can see here. It's got all the normal sort of things you would expect to see in a coin game, spaces and cities and looking for control. There are interesting specific mechanics and rules that make each game different, and this one has those as well. A lot of interesting dynamics to play out between the revolutionary forces, the Muslim League, how Pakistan can be sort of formed. What is the interplay with the princely states? I mean, there's a lot of interesting play in this one. So just based on what I've experienced so far, I think this is going to be a winner. It's going to be a lot of fun, like all the other coin games. But I'm looking forward to this one. It is not as complicated as, say, Pendragon, so I think this will be a little bit easier to get to the table than that game. And just in general, I think it's an interesting game experience. Looking forward to having my own copy. And then the final couple of things I'm just going to talk about real briefly in this video. They're technically not games, they are expansions, and amusingly enough, they're expansions to existing coin games. They are due to come out this year. Fingers crossed that they do. The first is Ario Vistus for A Falling Sky, which was the coin game dealing with Caesar's dealings in Gaul after he had sort of we'll say conquered it, and then he had to deal with an insurgency. This game is this expansion is sort of a prequel to those base scenarios in the base A Falling Sky game. And so there's a slight change in some of the factions. This deals with a little bit more of the Romans coming in to the region, I think. Back to Caesar's first entry. So, in some ways, it's telling the story of how the Romans, became the controlling faction that all the Gauls are rebelling against in the main game. So there's going to be some changes. I think it's that instead of the Belgic player, you're playing the Germanic tribe, so you're using the black pieces instead of the yellow pieces as a fourth player. Something along those lines. I do wonder if within this package there's going to be an opportunity to do sort of like a full campaign and do both. I doubt it just because of the way you have to deal with the factions, but more content for an existing coin game that I like. I can't say no to that. Adding new cards, adding some more pieces. The Adui are going to get, or the Adui, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, are going to get a leader, finally. Just in general, I think this will be a nice addition. Maybe not going to take the world by storm, but I think it's going to be an interesting twist on a game that I've played quite a bit of already. and I like the sound of that. And then the other is Inverno Cubano, Cuban Inferno. That is the expansion for Cuba Libre, and I really like Cuba Libre. Like any good coin game. What's always been nice about Cuba Libre is that it's the quickest playing one. It's probably the easiest to teach, and I've taught some other folks how to play Cuba Libre, and it's a straightforward, fun coin game. The only thing about it is there's really only one scenario with Cuba Libre, and you can sort of, I don't know, not that it gets boring, but you kind of know the strategies more, and so I think Inverno Cubano is going to help bring some more life to that game that it already has, and it's going to be, a sequel in that these scenarios are taking place after Castro and his movement have taken over Cuba. So there's potential for stuff dealing with the Bay of Pigs invasion, which is kind of interesting. It's gonna be a whole new set of scenarios and different events and all that kind of good fun stuff. So I think this will be a fun way to kind of change up Cuba Libre. Again, not sure if they're going to be able to do anything like a full combined campaign. Probably not. But hey, it's fast enough playing. At least the original Cuba Libre is that, hey, you play Cuba Libre with some friends, and if the Castro player, the communist player wins, then you can just set up a game of Inverno Cubano with the expansion pieces and play out a second game. I think that would be fun to do if you could fit the time in for it. So, looking forward to this one as well. It's gonna be pretty cool. I think we're gonna get it this year, and yeah. So I think that's it. That's my whole list of most anticipated games of 2018. There are other games that are probably coming out this year that I am interested in, but when it came down to just sit down and pick out, what are the ones that I'm really looking forward to, that I'm looking forward to having on my shelf, those are the ones that have most come to mind. And I'm sure, like anybody else, you have games that you are anticipating the most for 2018. So just to help increase the community involvement, let me know what you think about what your anticipated games are in the comment section below, and we can have a little chat about it. Obviously there's a lot of GMT games on here, but other publishers are doing great games, Decision Games, Compass Games. There are a lot of interesting games out there and on their way from these publishers, so it'd be interesting to know what other folks are looking at. Yeah, so I think that's it. If you have any other sort of thoughts or videos that you'd like to see, put that in the comment section down below as well. If you like the videos or are interested in to see what other content I'm going to be bringing down the road, like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'm going to keep working on my Fatal Alliances playthrough, and once I play that series through the end of the turn, I'll probably do a few one-off videos or switch gears entirely and start covering a few other games that I've been intending to talk to on here, and it's just one thing at a time. So, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later. See ya.